Hello and welcome to another edition of Razorwire. And today I am back with the professionals, Ian and Chris, to discuss the wonderful world of third-party risk and malicious insiders, what they are, why they're important, and where are we currently in the market with this, because a lot of the most recent attacks have been around third parties or third parties of third parties that have had some kind of security event which has caused knock-on effects to organizations. In a world of SaaS, platform as a service, and everything as a service, let's delve into it and see why it's an important thing for us to consider in today's information security strategy. Very contextual. As we were discussing this, 2 weeks ago about the subject matter, and in the last week or so, there's been a mega breach of social security numbers, which has proven that third parties can sometimes be quite a significant threat to your organization. Anyway, let's barrel into it. For as long as information security has been a thing, or security in general has been a thing, there's always been the possibility of being stabbed in the back by your mate or your business partner. It's been like that since we were monkeys running around hitting one another with rocks in order to nick each other's stuff. And not much has changed, not even in the context as technology has increased and we've started putting social engagements with things like businesses and organizations and so on and so forth. And as technology has gotten bigger and better, many organizations have found cheaper ways to do things, aka completely outsourcing it to third parties, which may well be cheap, but it puts you, from a security standpoint, in a very different place. And then, of course, you have the old internal threat where maybe somebody goes rogue or somebody joins the company with the intention, or not the best of intentions, so to speak, or even undertaking revenge. There's been plenty of cases where IT directors or IT individuals have found they're about to get removed from the organization or made redundant and have locked everything out that's rather critical for the systems to work. Third-party threat. What's your opinions on it, guys? Come on. Third-party threat and insider threat. Let's hit one and then hit the other one. I don't mind which one we hit first. Chris, go for it.
A third-party threat is always going to be there because it's you sort of lose control. But what you do is you hand over responsibility, and I think that's sort of the cheap, easy way out. Just to go, oh yeah, it wasn't actually us, it was them that we employed to do that job. They shirk responsibility on that. Granted, but then with that, if you are using third parties for a lot, you've got to do a lot of security due diligence. And I think where most companies probably downfall is they'll do the initial, which is great, but how many follow-ups do we do? How many follow-ups do we do as a business and a company to carry on? Are they still hitting the threshold that we need them to? Is anyone been turned since we took them on board? Blah blah blah. I think that's probably one of the biggest threats to the third-party side.
Well, the other thing is if they go out of business as well, because that's also happened in the past. 1 minute they're perfectly fine, and the next minute you suddenly find a load of your services aren't available to you. Boom. You're kind of screwed, because obviously you don't quite often you've known the backups to that, and organizations, especially third parties, they do like to make it very difficult for you to migrate from their service. Not saying that we've come across that with GRC tools in the past or anything like that. Ian, what's your thoughts on the subject, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable. You're going to have a third-party breach. I mean, there's about 10 a day. All third-party systems, a lot of them. SolarWinds obviously being the big one there, with the past and that. It's
CrowdStrike.
Yeah, it's all. So you could do all the due diligence in the world and all the security checks and balances. You could have a very robust vendor risk management, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, it's going to take one little maybe insider threat on the third-party side, and that will cause a breach. And you may have system outages, you may have data breaches and stuff like that. And whilst having all that VRM checks and balances in place is very good. It's all about how you deal with the aftermath as well. It's all very well saying, we've got the perfect vendor risk management in place. What you need to look at as a business is what's your resiliency like as well. Like if, say, like you're reliant on AWS and they go under, not that they ever would, but in an alternate universe, never say never, they go under, you've got like 50%, I don't know how much share of the market they have, but you've got a huge share of the market that no longer can provide services because they're reliant on the AWS to provide those products and services. They still have the outages themselves, let's be honest, they do. But it's about how do you deal with that aftermath as well. How do you build that into your resiliency plans? All right, can we not just have our eggs in one basket when it comes to a third party? Can we spread the load like AWS, Azure, GCP, not have everything off that? Can we flip from Terraform, like from Azure to AWS, like spin up our new services from that? So that's pretty much for the third party threat or management that you want to look at. That's my opinion of it, is have everything in place by all means, but think about the worst case scenario as well. Can you live without that?
Yeah, well, like when CrowdStrike went under a few weeks ago, it wasn't that you literally seen airlines grounded, airports can't move because like you say, everything was eggs in one basket. There was no backup plan. There was no no space out of services into different vendors, so you can at least run something and carry on your day-to-day business while you fix the problem. So yeah, I think that's definitely a big one. Is don't stick all your eggs in one basket and spread the love.
Well, I mean, there's been plenty of cases of third parties that have also been taken out. Look at Snowflake, for instance, and a number of other organizations over the last kind of 12 months. I think, it's frightening how, one link, it's like selling your house, isn't it? All it takes is one person to back out somewhere down the chain and you're all left out in the cold. There's nothing you can do. You have to start again. You have to kind of go through the whole process. Only with organizations, if your service provider provides you with a software as a service, say a CRM solution, they're probably sourcing their cloud technology from obviously somewhere else. They're not going to be doing it themselves. And if it's from an organization that has a breach, then your organization at the top end could be implicated in a breach that isn't actually technically your fault. It's and it's not even your supplier's fault. It's the supplier of your supplier. And we get into this really wicked and difficult sort of chain of where does it end? Because again, those suppliers have suppliers and so on and so forth. And you can wind up with a massive long chain of liability, and the only levels of liability that you're aware of, or vulnerability that you're aware of rather, is the first and maybe the second if you're lucky, but you can only contractually oblige the person you're procuring solutions from, for the right to audit. If you find out they're using XYZ cloud company for the servers in the cloud environment they're reselling onto you, then you've got no rights to check the security of those guys. You're reliant, as you say, on the company that you've engaged with to do their own checks and balances on their own suppliers and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and how far down the chain does that get washed out? How far? Like you say, your company A checks the supplier, and they've got all the accreditation, brilliant, because their supplier's okay. But then, as it filters down, how diluted is it?
And you've got to take into account your indemnity as well. Take into account what's going on, what went on with CrowdStrike and the airlines. I think it's Delta, is it? Who's
500,
yeah.
Is it 500 million or 500? Yeah, 500 million. They're trying
to get out of CrowdStrike for it because of losses essentially. But obviously they're indemnified within the contract too. I think it'll be capped at 5 mil or something like that. So it's kind of tough. Contract says 5. So you got to take that into account as well. How much can you get? And then there's an insurance element as well. How much is your cap on your insurance? Let's not go down that.
And insurance companies also don't like to pay out in the event of a breach.
But yes, it's a tricky one. It really is. I think the only way that you can have your pops and whistles, as I said earlier, but it's your resiliency. It's having that. How does your business pivot and deal with that? And it's also having that open discussion within the business, being having a good risk culture where you're open about the issues. You're not hiding it. You're talking about it, and you go, okay. You get the execs on board. You get the board on board. Board on board. To talk about, like these are our key issues. These are our almost like our failures to an extent. If there's an outage here, we're up shit creek with that paddle, so to speak. So it's being honest as well about that.
I must admit, I think some of the issues that are being sort of put out in the media at the moment, the social security numbers going awry from a service provider to, I'm guessing government bodies. I haven't read the absolute blurb into it as of yet. I've literally been away on business. You've also got people like Snowflake and so on and so forth. And there's been problems with various different cloud companies as well. Do you see the possibility that this is going to get to a point where organizations pull back from utilizing third parties and go to more of a, we'll control the cloud environment ourselves and you'll input your solutions into our service? In essence, it's kind of an on-premise, but it's not. Obviously, you'll own the cloud environment. They'll supply. It's almost old school. Go back 30 years and you had a CRM solution. You built a server, you installed the CRM solution on, you built the database that it connected to, and so on and so forth. You owned all the servers, you licensed the software, and you stored all the data yourselves, just so you could make sure that it was all nice and secure, and it was your remit to secure that environment.
I think with that, the cost saving of using third party is, it is immense compared to doing it exactly that way, or an on-prem solution, or even, like you say, owning your own servers, but on in a storage unit as it was. I think
in a garage.
In a garage. If you're an intermediate business, I just don't think that I don't think that it's cost effective to do that. Compared to how much it is to for a SaaS license, for instance, and then because of the infrastructure that comes with it.
Even if you were to control the entire environment and they just come in, load their software, whatever, onto you, you're still at risk because you're still reliant on that third-party software. But CRM in this case, it's like with the vulnerabilities in that. So there's still an element of actually they could put a back door in there if they wanted to and stuff like that. So
there is that, but you're also controlling your perimeter better. You've got better control, of the connections coming through. I guess in many respects, I think as a consultant, I do see a lot of organizations interacting with some of our customers who are, they're early days in what they're trying to do. They've got something innovative, but they don't have the cash to do the level of security that is really needed to kind of secure their environment. Where it's a tough situation when you're an up and coming third party service provider. Now, a lot of people use people like AWS. I know organizations who are software development firms who use elements of the software as a service portfolio of products you can get through AWS. But it's still AWS, isn't it? It's like, wouldn't it be better now? There are still some organizations that allow you to take the products they're selling and put them on premise, but it's normally at a premium. However, if this continues and we've got more and more companies getting done over by their third parties of third parties and third parties and so on and so forth, I can see there being large organizations especially turning around and saying, no, we want your solution, but we're not having it as a software as a solution. Give us a license, give us the install, we'll build our server set, you tell us what we need in order to build it, and we'll build it and manage it ourselves, and we'll just pay your license fee. Because they're not going to be able to rely on the security of that third party. It's just too big a risk, because ultimately, yes, the organization who has the breach is going to be in a lot of trouble themselves, but you're still the one on the chopping block from your customers because they don't care about your third party. You could say, oh, it was XYZ cloud company that got done over, and our third party service provider uses that service. Your customers aren't going to care. They're going to blame you.
Yeah, because it's your service that they're after, that they've bought, not
they contracted
three down
to
the line.
you, not to your third party. And I can see. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I can see there being an effort in the future if this continues, and I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon, that larger organisations are, because we know the military does. I know the UK military does. If they want to have a solution, let's just say a vulnerability scanning solution, they're not going to allow that information to be hosted on that third party's environment. They'll say, we want our own version of it in our own environment. Admittedly, they pay the price.
Yeah, they'll buy the servers ready to go and house them on-prem with their own connections. They're literally just buying, like I say, they're buying the servers with the service already installed, and then the upkeep of that I'm sure that'll be a contract. But that works on, if you've got endless pot of money. But if you're a mid-sized company,
I was going to say the overheads of maintaining an on-prem,
because then that service agreement just how many updates do AWS push throughout a day that we don't, that as a third party you don't know about, as a customer you don't know about. They're just maintaining that. If you've got to have someone to come on-prem to do that every time there's just a time update. That's
what we used to do. That's what we used to do 20, 30 years ago. It was like,
but and it was dealing with data sets of 54 meg.
I'm obviously the old man of this particular group.
Yeah, you are.
There was 2 people in the world trying to hack in, and that was it.
2 people in the world, and the rest. I mean, admittedly, it's a lot more prolific now. But I think, I'm starting to see a lot of my customers getting really, really concerned about third-party threats, because they are seeing this kind of stuff and they're starting to ask that question: what do we do about it? And I mean, as we always advise, always have obviously right to audit with your third parties, but you need to make sure that your third parties have a program of their own, which kind of checks their own key service providers. But unless that's put into the contract right at the beginning when you engage with that organisation, if you've got no right to audit, then that's it, and they're not going to let you out of your contract. If you turn around and say, we're 2 years into our 5-year contract, we want to add a right to audit into the contract. Okay, that'll cost you a massive amount of money. Okay, well, we'll just cancel the contract. Oh, you're still going to pay your extra 3 years that you would have used, because it's a 5-year contract. You can migrate wherever you want. I don't know. I mean, I saw a bit of a problem with this, for instance, with early day cloud. When everybody was creating their own cloud, people would go, oh, great, cost savings. You can manage all of the underpinning hypervisor technology, and we'll just stick our virtual servers on the top of it. But what these cloud companies were doing was they were getting snapped up by other cloud companies. Some of them were going under because they didn't have enough funding. Any IT person with any kind of skill set was creating cloud companies all over the place. And in some cases, they failed. And of course, once the money runs out, no data center is going to keep the services running in order to allow people access to their data. They're just going to turn it off. They don't give a stuff about the customers, or the customer of the customer. As far as they're concerned, their bill hasn't been paid. So, we did have that problem back then, but the companies made it so difficult for you to migrate away from them, by not allowing you to export data, by forcing you contractually to do it in very convoluted ways that would extend the contract by quite a significant amount beyond the end of your contract, and usually with some kind of cost associated with migrating away, that people just didn't want to do it. And I think that's why, or a part of the reason why, AWS and Azure and all the big boys in the cloud environments are the most popular, because people's perception is, well, we're never going to migrate away from them. as long as they keep their costs relatively cheap.
And then the problem with somewhere like AWS is as they get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, they have to have more employees, more servers, more locations, and then that pool of potential targets to turn someone into an insider. The risk exposure just goes, just migrates. It's massive because now you've gone from a small SaaS provider with 100 employees and 3 sites that you can easily monitor and see what they're doing and right to audit, and then it's nice and small and confined. Now you've gone to AWS that have I don't even know how many people, nor how many sites, and 9 times out of 10, do you know like where your data's been, what sites your data being held on?
I think you can choose, but you don't. It's only in a region. It's not.
Yeah.
Oh, that data center somewhere right there. You don't know whether they've done their due diligence on the data center. Like, is it under the flight path of a airport, or is it, is it on a floodplain? Why anybody would build a data center on a floodplain, but you never know. There are some idiots out there that do really random and crazy things.
Someone's garage.
Someone's garage. Cheap land.
Yeah. Oh, don't. I've done audits before on an old, what would have been an old cow shed that somebody has turned into a data center out in Guernsey, to capitalize on the explosion of small data centers. I've been there. I've done it. It's a lot rarer now since everybody tends to go with the big boys. But third-party threat is one of those things that, it's not. Usually, anyway, it's not malicious, as in, the company has failed, somebody has hacked your third party. Obviously, it's malicious for them, but it's not necessarily for you. But let's talk about malicious insiders, because that's something very, very different. And I think that's what provokes a lot more discourse. And I think a lot of organizations don't like thinking about an insider who goes rogue or an insider threat. And I had a really interesting conversation before I hand over with a guy who I'm going to be interviewing him for some of what his company does. And he's created a solution that maps and tracks departmental and individual threats, the human threat, to the organization. And he does it through connections through to various different sort of pieces of software like Azure, Office 365, that kind of thing, checking logs where, how many times has somebody forgotten their password, how many times has they failed to log in, and what he does is he then kind of takes all these different metrics from all these different sources, and then it will design or advise a security awareness training package of awareness training solely to that individual. They'll get feeds in from phishing, sort of phishing training or phishing tests. It was really, really interesting. The guy's called Flavius, and I'll
just imagine Dawson's profile on that though. It'll be all the training, everything.
Can't beat it. Can't beat training. You gotta highlight where people are going wrong.
But insider threats, we've all come across it. Nobody wants to admit they've ever come across it, and no organisation wants to admit that they fear.
Someone's gone against the company culture, essentially. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I used to get a lot of, we trust our staff, and then you would get, say, 2-3 years down the line, and they'd come back to you and say, actually, can we talk about security now, because we've had somebody who's stolen a load of data, or I've had a lot of instances of IP that's been stolen and then sold to like competitors, especially in the very early days of Razorthorn's existence. There was a couple of customers who had that happen to them, and not only did it hit them really hard from a financial element, but also from a mental perspective as well, from a trust perspective, because quite often the people who went rogue were the ones that you trusted the most. I know Ian's probably smiling on this one, but at the end of the day, that insider threat, it usually comes from sources you would never have thought. And I want to get your both of your opinion on this, because you've worked for a number of different organisations over the years, where I'm sure this has happened. And obviously, let's keep it nice and vague, because we don't want to, allegedly out anybody or cause any problems. And of course, everything that we talk about is us only and not related to anything our customers or our employers say or do.
They kind of fall into several brackets when it comes to side of it. You've got your nefarious, actually doing it on purpose because they're peed off, and then you've got your accidental.
9 times out of 10, it's going to be an accidental.
Stupidity.
Phishing, stupidity.
Yeah.
Not keeping up with the company's security culture, not doing the security awareness training, not highlighting something when it goes wrong, not when it goes wrong, or when someone notices something and just going, someone else will deal with that. Like a beeping alarm. A beeping alarm is the worst thing in the world, isn't it? Because it keeps on going, and then after day 3. Yeah, everyone ignores it because it's just the norm, and no one's checked it.
Or it could just be bad luck. Bad luck does happen.
Yeah,
it happens. Wrong time, wrong place, and all that jazz. Yeah, it does happen.
Wrong place, wrong time. And then the malicious side is, corporate espionage or criminal activity, and the lengths they go to. I think I can't find the article
as well.
Well, we can't mention that, can we? Because that doesn't happen apparently.
No.
What doesn't?
What? State threat, apparently.
State threat. Yeah, there's a whole kettle of. I mean, that has come to the fore more recently. I'm not saying it didn't happen before, but I mean, proper malicious insiders. I've seen all kinds of cases over the years. I mean, the first set that you mentioned, stupidity, lack of training, wasn't thinking, half asleep because of jet lag, like I am at the moment. It's easy to do, and I've actually come across a number of like security professionals who have actually been called out in that way. Yeah. True malicious insiders are really, really frightening, because either they're in the right space to do it with the right kind of access. Yeah,
I think especially as a company, if you've got obviously depending on what your company is, you've got to stage out who has privileged access to what, and again, not put all your eggs in one basket. Not make sure that one person has access to everything. It's got to be split out. So, and then I want to say motive. What's the motive behind it? Is it a disgruntled employee that has access to the HR records? Okay, it's a pain in the ass, but it's not a massive issue. We just got to make sure that
privacy issue. I think
it's a massive privacy issue. But then that's where it's not. Although it is security, you've got to bring in. There's lots of different stakeholders that come into that, isn't it? There's the team management of the team. So someone needs to notice something different about that character. Then there's a HR input from there. Then there's a security input from there. And if someone's not happy in their job, that needs highlighted. If they're not happy in their job and they've been highlighted on a professional level, are they sat with HR and are they under some sort of review? Do they, now they're under a review, do they need to be on an internal monitoring, or do we need to look after them a little bit more? Not for anything malicious, but just what if, exactly like you said before, that last day of that person getting fired or moved on or redundancy, with no gardening leave, and by the way, here's your 2 weeks notice, and on that last day just locks people out of the system. And although you can get around that by getting it back, that just causes hours of pain and lost revenue and just annoyance.
Well, I mean, the other thing to bear in mind is, if somebody's truly going to be malicious about this, and there is an additional item actually. Which one should I hit first? The additional item. Most recently, access brokers have been paying insiders who know they're on their way out for administrative level access before they go. Take the usernames, passwords, the MFA, sort of like type and all the rest of it. Allow them access whilst they're there. So it just looks like a compromised account, but it's not actually a compromised account. Somebody has sold it, through cryptocurrency normally, access to their soon-to-be former employers' network because they don't care. You know, they know they're about to get made redundant. It's like it was in the very early days. IT people were very clued up as to what was going on around the environment. So were finance people, you know, and because IT and finance people had a tendency back in the day to work or report to the same stream, you would always get wind of when like people were about to get made redundant, because like head office would suddenly ask for all of the financial records of the organization. There were specific things you could look out for. You know, and it opened up the possibility that somebody somewhere would try to, you know, do something to try to save their own jobs, which ultimately it never does. But I don't know, insider threat, I've seen a lot of it. I've actually seen a surprising amount of it, and it goes very unreported.
Yeah.
They're quietly shuffled off.
Yeah, most of it is probably a disgruntled employee or someone that's not had a great time, and then they're not. I mean, if you've got that as a I don't know, whatever business you're in, but if you like it to a developer or something that's critical to your business, then that's a little bit different as opposed to just someone that's got the standard access but can, you know, give away client list and bits and bobs and take that to a new company. That's, you know, that's just annoyance. But yeah, I think that 9 times out of 10 it's probably more a disgruntled employee, isn't it? I think gone are the days of where you've got corporate espionage.
I've seen cases where it's actually it's not disgruntled. The person's just an idiot who thinks they're too small fry for anyone to notice what they're doing. If I know where we've had cases. I've seen cases of that, and then obviously we caught them, and you read their emails and stuff like that, and it's kind of like they've admitted, like, nah, don't worry about it. I'm too small fry. You're like,
yeah, no one's going to notice.
Company espionage. That is actually that's actually one of the ones I see quite a bit, but it only really happens with people with IP. It doesn't.
Yeah, no, and that's what I meant. Sorry, gone are the you know, the not gone, but it's very, very rare you see someone coming up to one of the employees with, you know, a brown envelope and say, "Oh, do me a favor, stick this in there for and here's an envelope of cash." I mean the physical company espionage side, as opposed to going in network wise.
I guess that's how you get caught, though, isn't it? I mean, you know,
it's the easiest way, though.
This is it. I think a lot more malicious insiders these days. You know, they're obviously they're doing whatever they're doing for financial gain. Why else would they take the risk that they're going to do that? I mean, you can get serious jail time for fraud.
You can also get serious under the National Secrets Act. Not national. Is it National Secrets Act? I keep getting I name it wrong.
I had a close friend recently, probably read in the papers a couple of months ago, that he was accused of working for the Hong Kong government and giving secrets away. He worked for our UK government. There were 3 people that was arrested. One of them was a person I knew from the military. But that's exactly what we're talking about there. That's exactly what happened there. They, you know, can you give us information? Here's an envelope of cash. This is what we need.
Yeah, even in the as a business now, they've updated the UK National Secrets Act. I may be quoting it wrong there, but to include that intellectual property essentially that is essential to the UK. So if you're a UK business and you're considered like you've got a wonderful AI system or anything like that, which they've quoted as part of the examples given like of corporate espionage, you can get 12 years now on the National Secrets Act. Yeah, that came out earlier this year. They updated it in 2024.
There was a company or a small company.
Yeah, no. Before I've put a very good article out where they've basically put out what they can because it's under FBI investigation right now of a North Korean fake IT worker infiltrating them, and they've full cards on the table as much as they can. It's very interesting. The pitch that was used was AI doctored. So yeah, it was really good and essentially really good background into And they go through like, these are the checks that we do, background checks and stuff like that, and everything like that. But it still went through the net. But they do say no data is lost, everything like that. They caught it in time, but it still happens.
But this, I mean, I was watching a podcast the other day about, with a retired CIA spy, the guy was saying this happens so often with a certain denomination of Asian individuals who come along to universities. They're students, they look like students, they are students, but ultimately they're actually, agents of the state. It's just some states play very, very long games on this. And then you have the old, it's recently come out, the whole kind of like certain parts of the world that may be at war with another smaller part of the world a little bit south of them are well known for sending in honey traps and honey pots, who kind of, become the girlfriends, quite often it is anyway, the girlfriends of individuals in key areas of business, who will then utilize that position as their partner to gain access to places. So sometimes it's not even a malicious insider, it's somebody who's adjacent to the malicious insider. I mean, we're running out of time, but how do we deal with that? I mean, the third party stuff, that's tough enough, because yes, you could do your due deal on your first layer of your third party, and maybe the second layer if you're lucky, but it gets more difficult as you go down the chain. And I can see a lot more organizations starting to get tougher on contracts now on that kind of thing, and that's the only real way to handle that, short of legislation. I know we've got DORA and NIS2 coming in, which will help with that. But insider threat, I mean, one of the things that I like about the way the direction a lot of security I see, especially solution-based stuff that I see, is it's now starting to look at multiple systems and services and logs and what have you. Maybe with mixing a bit of AI in, we'll do well with this one. To tell the story of events that are occurring on a security level within an organization. So seeing people logging in at funny times of the day, coupled with seeing people accessing data sets at strange times at the same time, or exfiltrating certain data and putting it onto a USB stick, which, okay, that's a bit old school now, or emailing it to themselves. There's a lot more monitoring tools out there geared towards monitoring individuals, especially since the lockdowns, because there's been a lot of distrust over whether or not people are actually doing the work that they're there to do. But do you see more of that occurring? Do you think that that's the best way to go? Or do you have any other ideas of how malicious insiders are discovered? I mean, one of the things that we definitely have implemented here is checking criminal records on a yearly basis, as opposed to just when you employ them, because people get arrested all the time and they don't necessarily tell people about it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think background checks, and so I'll go back to the one that we just mentioned there. They applied for a job, took it. I think it was a developer's job. Took a developer's job. They got lots of resumes, picked out a few candidates, had an interview with what they thought was a person, which actually turned out to be an AI person. They got the job, posted to a PO box in a nutshell, and it was only a notice, really, because this new employee was doing things that new employees shouldn't be doing. It was way too advanced for a new employee, so it was flagged up. But had they played the long game with that, they would probably never got noticed. And so there's just like you said there. So yes, that's great. Okay, we've done initial checks and they got through them. But how many checks have we done in the last 5 years on individuals? Individual circumstances change all the time. Are we up to date with? Are they up to date with our security procedures and policies? Are they still in line with what we want as a person? You have to do regular checks, and everyone has to be informed to do that. And and agree and say, yep, there's nothing to hide, nothing changed, no change here, there, and everywhere. And I think that's probably one of the best ways to go about it, is just constantly checking.
But then you're still relying on the employee being truthful.
Yeah.
It's difficult because obviously we've got databases that we can check, DBS and stuff like that. But from a business perspective, you can buy those enhanced services for background checks, but they don't go as far as they would. Say you're applying for MOD position and all that jazz that requires certain clearances. They don't go as that far. The only way that you could ever get that type of clearance is to have an ex-site sponsor you and stuff like that. So it's really difficult to go to that nth degree. It's a difficult thing to manage on an ongoing basis of doing those checks because there's limited sources that you can check. There are tools, obviously, but they're all proactive. They're not, they're reactive rather than proactive for like monitoring employees' behaviors and stuff like that, which we are seeing, obviously, don't kind of like to, you can see where my mouse is going and all that jazz from a privacy perspective. But, you can do that. I mean, the know before one, they only caught because of as soon as they got the MacBook, it just started loading malware. So their stock went, oh, hang on, what's going on? And that triggered it. So you would have thought they waited a bit. but
what do they care? Because they're gone by that time. I mean, if you're a malicious insider and you've purposely gone in for a malicious intent from the beginning, and it's not like something that you've fallen into because you're disgruntled and you're annoyed with the soon to be former employer, then you're gonna work out your exit plan. That's the best way to describe it. It's like, you've both been in the military. If you're getting out of Dodge, then you work on your exit plan way before you make your exit, because if you try and do it on the fly on the way out of whatever war zone or difficult engagement that you're in, you're probably going to become a bit of a cropper.
Yeah, I'll explain that to Ian after this, actually, so he has understanding what you're talking about. But carry on.
Thanks, mate.
But ongoing monitoring, blanket monitoring. I'm not talking about what people are clicking on and all the rest of it, but kind of the human element of monitoring, where you're checking what are their tendencies, when do they log in, are they logging out at funny times of the day? Maybe it is a compromised account, but maybe it's not. Maybe someone's lining up. What actions are they taking when they're wandering around the network and doing things over the course of the day? Are they accessing their boss's email? Well, hang on a minute. Have they been given access? Yes, they were, but it should have been rescinded 6 months ago. Well, why are they looking at the email now? What I like to look at is solutions that tell a story and will pull in from multiple sources. And I do think that that's going to be a significant part of security going forward. I do think the catalyst has been working from home, the lockdowns and the push towards that. And I mean, we all know, who was it? Was it Morgan Stanley who annoyed their staff by putting in kind of like measures to prevent people from just getting automated mouse clickers to make it look like they were working? I think that kind of security is going to get more advanced. And to be honest, I think, if you are worried about malicious insiders, if you're that type of organization where you have a reason to be worried, then I think you should start looking at adding that to your portfolio of products. Same with psychometric testing. If you're working in an environment where you're developing IP, new plans for fighter aircraft, new plans for tanks, new plans for radar equipment, you should start looking at doing some kind of testing on your staff to accompany the monitoring side of things, where you are looking at that human element a little bit more closely, not only to find out who are the biggest risk factors for doing the stupid stuff, who's consistently failing to, with their phishing tests, have they clicked on the phishing link 3 times out of 4, catching that kind of thing, which we can do at the moment, but also monitoring of their work patterns. Do they tend to have lunch at 1 o'clock? If they do, and all of a sudden you're finding they're working through 1 o'clock, is there a reason for that?
A change in an employee's behaviour that's a big sign. What it don't have to be even anything to do with insider threat, just on a welfare side. Changing someone's behaviour. And that's the easiest way to flag and notice something up is the team. So that security culture that comes in is just don't be afraid to highlight something. If it's nothing, it's nothing. That's great, brilliant.
Tell you what, information security gets more and more complex every time I sit down and talk about, current events. We're worried about AI, we're worried about the human element, we're worried about third parties, we're still worried about data and business impact assessments and appropriate risk management. I mean, it is. I was looking at a post the other day from Chris Roberts. I'm hoping to have him on the channel, and he was saying, stepping away from just the technological element of being a CISO is scary, and it feels like you're going out of your depth. Just going on, for me, just going on holiday for a week, coming back and just you panic over what you're going to see when you come back. I mean, the stress levels for being a CISO are quite high, but maybe that's the subject for the next one. And I know you guys are busy. We've reached the top end of our hour, but any sort of final closing statements on third-party risk and malicious insiders? Do you think this is something that is going to be a significant part of the security iceberg or protect, onion going forward, or do you think it's something that is just going to stay consistent?
I think it's going to exasperate more than anything because you're going to have more and more outsourcing. That's the way the world's going at the end of the day. So it's going to get a bit more exasperated than anything before it plateaus. And I think when it comes down to it, have all that vendor risk, even third party, for insiders, have all your checks and balances in place, but have a plan, a resiliency plan to deal with it at the end of the day.
So you think you should replace all employees with AI then? Because there you go, that removes that threat.
Well, they seem to get through job applications better. So yeah.
What about you, Chris? Shall we replace you with an AI?
You couldn't. It'd be impossible. They don't have the charm.
You call it charm, right?
No, I agree with. Not often I say it, but I do agree with him. I think it will. I think it will carry on. But I think the message is that we need to carry on exactly like you said before. We do a check when someone turns up, and with everything, we do a check when someone turns up. We do a check on a supplier or a vendor risk management. We do that then. If we've got a 5-year contract or we've got an employee that's going to be here for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years, how often do we carry them out? And I don't think we should be scared to have that into contracts and into employee contracts that as a company we will be carrying on checking at any points we want to, just to make sure that you're okay, we're okay, and you are up to our standards.
I think this is going to get much bigger area of InfoSec going forward. But anyway. Thank you, guys. Again, we've bitten through the meat of the solution. Have we reached a final kind of point where we can categorically say what we should do about third party and malicious insiders? No, because I don't think that question is ever going to get fully answered. But I do believe that having these discussions is really important because it might make us think a little bit more about other areas that we haven't been considering when it comes to dealing with threats to our organizations and potentially to ourselves. So thank you, guys.
Thanks.
And thank you for listening or even watching the latest edition of Razorwire. It's always good to get feedback. Please feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to us via LinkedIn or through our website, www.razorthorn.com. If you feel that there's something that we should cover maybe a little bit more in depth, a new topic or something of interest to you or the community at large, we'll even do interviews. If you've got any recommendations or you want us to interview people, we'll reach out to those individuals and see if we can get them on camera so we can ask them the important questions about InfoSec. So it'd be great to see what your feedback is. In addition, I do have a book recently come out, the Cyber Sentinels Handbook, a primer for information security professionals. Now, this book is very much geared up towards professionals at all levels of their career, be they starters, be they newcomers, be they people who've been in it for a little while and maybe looking for a little bit more direction, albeit the older ones looking to maybe reground themselves in some of the more important aspects of the trade that maybe they've forgotten over time. I've had lots of good feedback from a lot of different readers of lots of different levels, so please feel free to get yourselves a copy. We've got the e-copy, we've also got the paperback copy, and if you don't want to spend any money, you can go on Kindle Unlimited and read the book for free there as well. So thank you ever so much again. Look after yourselves, and we'll be seeing you again soon.